I'm gonna tell you all, it's time to kick your ass in gear. It's time to tear down fear. Do something now. The moment has arrived. We can tell we're alive and do more than survive. Do something now. It's time we do something, do something, do something now. Do something, do something, do something now.
Hi there, this is Tim Jackson, and I'm happy to have with me today Pete Kronowitt, who is in that tradition of folk singers, and I'll talk to him a little bit about if he really considers himself to be a folk singer, but his music is very message intensive, we will say, and we'll listen to a little bit of his music today, but he's got a new album coming out, which is going to be in September 18th, and it's called Do Something Now. But Pete, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. I love that you're doing the show.
Thank you so
Being
much.
that I do have message intense songs.
Yes. And when I listened to your album, I thought this is the exact type of person who I want on this show. Someone who has a lot to say clearly and is saying it in his music, but is also saying it outside of his music as well. And so let's actually jump right in before we kind of get into your music more intensely and talk a little bit about Sister District Project. The name of your album is Do Something Now, or we did hear a song at the beginning of the show, a little bit of Do Something Now. That song obviously implores action. And with Sister District Project, it's imploring action really on the state legislature level of government. And so why have you kind of zeroed in on Sister District Project and their attempts to get state legislatures to turn blue?
So when after the presidential election in 2016, many of us were concerned about what was going to happen in the country, and I started thinking about all the things that I personally care about. I care about a lot of different areas. I care about affordable and effective health care, and climate change, and reducing gun violence, and economic and racial justice. And I mean, these aren't really small things. And then and I heard the current resident of the 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I heard his rhetoric around immigration. I knew that it was going to be bad. So when you care about all those kind of things, and you want to have an impact, the only way to have an impact is through making sure the right people do get elected. And it turns out the state legislature, in whatever state you live in the country, passes more laws that affect you personally than the federal government. That's the first thing. The second thing, I feel like I'm Joe Biden. The second thing is, is that this year in particular, 2020, every 10 years in the United States we have a census. When the census is complete, then what that does is it triggers the drawing of both state and congressional districts. And so they get locked in for a decade. That means that all the gerrymandering that has been in place for the last decade has a chance to get reset. And if one party, the Republican Party mainly, if they're in control of both the chambers of the state legislature, then they decide, for the most part, depending on the state, how those districts get drawn. So gerrymandering could be influencing government, which causes really crazy laws. Extremism, really, I think that's one of the main sources of extremism, is the fact that if people can't vote out their politician, then they can do anything they want, and that certainly have. They've been a testing ground, so that's why that's the long answer of why Sister District Project, with 45,000 volunteers and 80 chapters. I chose Sister District Project because they're very smart, they're very strategic, they're very effective, and I've loved working with the group.
Right, and we should point out you're a San Francisco-based artist, but Sister District Project is a U.S. nationwide organization. So if people, and I'll link to it below, And so if people want to go to sisterdistrict.com and take a look at sort of what's going on in their particular area, in their particular state, they can get involved anywhere in the U.S.
Anywhere in the U.S. And, what we do is we support elections from, the idea of connecting one place to another. Sister cities is the concept, not so much the idea of a female, was the idea of the name. So connecting San Francisco with other districts where, us lending a hand by making some phone calls or doing some fundraising, or there's, just normal things that the campaigns need. We've made a difference. I mean, we flipped, it was not just Sister District, but we did a lot of work in Virginia. We flipped both chambers of the state legislature in Virginia in 2019. And, I'm really proud of the work we did. Yeah. We've changed people's lives.
Yeah, no doubt. I still have, I had lived in Virginia for several years, now several years ago, but I still have a lot of friends in the state, mostly Southwest Virginia, and I know there was a lot of excitement about what was happening in the state legislature, like you said, back in 2019. And let me ask you just a little bit about how, I guess it's a chicken and egg kind of thing with your music and politics, but sort of which came first for you? Were you a singer-songwriter that got into politics, or were you very politically minded and became a musician?
I think I was one of those many people who, were aware of political issues, how politics affects people's lives. And I started writing songs, topical songs, fairly early on when my first album has a couple songs on it. But I wouldn't say I was actively engaged. And the activism came much later. It came really in 2017. I mean, I knocked on some doors and, made some phone calls, but it wasn't, not like now. Now I'm all in.
Right. Well, things have changed a little bit since back then. So it's a little more pressing now, so it seems.
Yeah.
And so we'll talk about that in terms of your music. I think the song that you're going to play for us here is Roly Poly. So let's go ahead and talk about the title track then a little bit. Do Something Now. Just tell me a little bit about sort of the message of that song and why you chose that to be the title track of the album.
Well, as I have been saying, I'm really not that subtle anymore. Right. I feel like the whole idea of, it boils down to where I am creatively and from an activist standpoint. Mm-hmm. The fact that, I think music can play a lot of roles. The music is not one-dimensional, of course, but music, it can speak to people in many different ways. So the idea of that song as a call to action, you can say something very directly in a song that that doesn't sound so it doesn't sound so abrupt when you have a nice tune. So that was the idea of the song, and make it simple enough that people could kind of really internalize it with one listen. Mm-hmm. And this is the song that I use and all these shows I'm doing, because I'm doing a lot of shows for a bunch of campaigns, mostly state legislative campaigns across the country.
And speaking of, so there's a particular style about some of your songs. And one song that I want to mention is, the title is We're All Gonna Die. But when you listen, it has very much the feel of like a children's song. It has, it's like you said, it's kind of a simple song. It's upbeat. It's a very fun tune. So sort of what was that a conscious sort of juxtaposition to have lyrics such as We're All Gonna Die with a kind of fun, upbeat, almost children's song sounding tune?
Absolutely. The idea was to, that was literally a stream of consciousness song. The joke is that it took me 30 years and 5 minutes to write that song, Yeah. And, what it does is it takes a serious topic and puts a lot of sarcasm on it consumerism and climate change, and then and it's a upbeat, over the top, completely over the top. But the thing for me, like there was a couple songs on the album that I was not gonna. I was just recording them to see if they would come out okay.
Mhm.
And then my friend Veronica Maund, who I love dearly, she's a great singer songwriter, and we do a lot of live performance together. She came in and she did backing vocals on the whole album, and then she came up with that vocal part, and I'm like, that did it. That and what it did is it brought the serious topic, even with a fun, upbeat song, but it just kind of made it perfect for
Yeah.
me. So I really like what that song, the way it came out.
Yeah, and Veronica's great. There's a lot of songs, and I'll link to your YouTube channel, and she's with you in a lot of videos, and really adds a lot to the music. So it's good to give her credit as well. And then
And I mean, her music is awesome too. I just can't, I can't like talk about Veronica without, she's well beyond her years in her perspective in songwriting. I just love her.
right.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, that's
I
right.
can't
We
help it.
definitely encourage people, and in fact, I'll link to her site and YouTube stuff as well in the descriptions and everything below. But speaking of songs that maybe weren't going to be on the album, and also the fact that you have a lack of subtlety these days, I was listening through the album. I was very into it already, and then we hit track 9, which is a song called "Are We Great Yet?" And that really hits you in the face right off from the first line. So just tell me a little bit about "Are We Great Yet?" and sort of what your intention was with that song.
Well, I would, like many of us, we might be participating in social media a bit and have had those unending discussions with people we don't agree with. And, I've been called a lot of names. And so that's where that song initially came from. In the one sense, our conversations have gotten so ugly. So it really is making a point of, just taking it and trying to flip the narrative a bit, and, saying, yeah, call me what you will. And I take it, I am a libtard. That I am certainly a liberal, progressive person. I don't consider myself like a, die on the wool Democrat.
Right.
But I believe in the planks of the Democratic platform, and as long as whatever candidate is going to uphold those values, I'm totally good with voting Democrat. So, yeah, I'm not shy about that at all. That's definitely not subtle.
Yeah, it is not. We definitely encourage when this album comes out September 18th. Hopefully everyone will buy the album. If you have to, listen on Spotify or some other streaming service. But check it out. It's 11 songs. I guess technically it's 10 songs on the album, and Do Something Now is on there twice, an acoustic version, and then the more fully produced version. And we're talking about you, and at the beginning of the show, I mentioned kind of in that folk tradition. So do you consider yourself to be a folk singer, or what other genre might you put yourself in?
Yeah, you can use the folk genre with me, because what that does is it kills a music career. So I'm totally good with that.
There you
No,
go.
I mean, I like everybody. I like a lot of different kinds of music. I like kinds of music that I don't play. I mean, there might be influence there. I love alternative rock and punk and stuff like that, and a little bit of that comes out in some of my songs, a little bit.
Right.
And but and I do like the old country music. I mean, you can
Mhm.
tell that from the album. And it took me a while just to kind of really embrace that. But yeah, call me a folkie too.
Right.
I'll do
Right.
that.
Well, it's definitely it's a good mix of music. I think it's kind of surprising maybe for people who take a look, because it is well-rounded, a lot of different songs, and like I said, the kind of interesting thing is with a few of those songs that have almost that children's song sort of bounce and lilt to them, and upbeatness, and then have a very powerful message behind them. And but I wanted to talk to you about one more thing before we move on to getting you to play a song for us, and that's your collective that you started called Face the Music. And obviously, you are at an intersection of kind of music and politics and activism. So tell me a little bit about Face the Music and how you began that.
I felt like I was on a path for a number of years to try and figure out how you can encourage more people to get engaged. You know, like the most of the issues that we have that are supposedly contentious, the majority in this country want to see common sense gun laws. They want to give women's rights, equal rights. They want to make sure reproductive rights are intact. There's so many of these issues that really are not, they're only contentious because the majority does not, they're not represented in government appropriately. And, and that's the way it was in 2016. So what I was trying to do is figure out a way to use performances that you can kind of guide people to the next stage of engagement. Because I think a lot of people really personally do care. They feel they want to have an impact and not, I think it's very difficult for people to figure out what they should do, what organization, there's so many options, what they should do. So, if you, the idea of Face the Music Collective is to use your performance, partner with an organization, and then develop a call to action during your performance, whatever that might be, and make sure the organization influences that call to action, crafts that call to action with you, and that you can execute it together, and that it's really a really simple concept. I was thinking about all the protest music that, from my youth and before, that, that it was moving, like our buddy John Lennon, like he built a vision with one song, Imagine. Mm-hmm. And I think we've not really lived up to that vision yet, and having incremental steps and taking them logically together and guiding each other to those steps, I think that's how we get to that vision.
And so Face the Music is a collective, as I mentioned, and kind of what is its reach in terms of geography?
So we have about 60 artists who have said that they're going to use their shows for good causes. Doesn't necessarily mean politics. And it's, a public commitment that you're going to do, you incorporate calls to action and with a partner organization. That's really the idea. It's most of the artists are from all over the United States, from, really all over the United States. And we have a number of artists in Canada as well. We now have one artist in Switzerland, but we really haven't reached out beyond that. And most of the focus, as you might guess, is around the election.
Right.
Yeah. So what I'm doing right now is I'm working with a lot of these artists to do shows for campaigns that we think we can have an impact. Just that what I said, we incorporate a call to action during the show and make sure we give a candidate an opportunity to, have a little differentiated event.
Right.
In this time when we're sheltering at home, and that they can have some music associated with what they're doing and give them a platform to speak to some of the people that they wouldn't have, normally pay attention to a political speech.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's some great work that you're doing, both with Face the Music and, of course, you're one of many thousands who are working with Sister District to get some state legislatures to turn blue. So we certainly appreciate all you're doing there, but also your music as well. We appreciate, and I know we want to end with the song that you're going to play, and it's Roly Poly. And go ahead and introduce that song and tell us a little bit about, if people don't catch on to it with when they're listening, give us a little bit of a glimpse of sort of what that song's about and sort of what your mindset was when you were writing the song.
Well, there's this little park near my house, and I love to sit out in the park, and there's all these little animals, and it's, you can't help but seeing these little animals and their vulnerability, especially as the climate changes. And then there's the idea, and you're right. I really do pull upon the idea of I think there's a child in all of us. Matter of fact, there's going to be a video for this song. It's an animated video. It'll appeal to kids for sure. But the child in all of us really, going back to that very innocent time when you see this little, and it turns out, they're called pill bugs or roly polies. They only live in certain areas of the world where there's a little bit of moisture. But when you know them, you feel really kind of like connected to them because the fact that they're trying to protect themselves, but they're so small.
Right.
Anyway, that was the idea of the song. So I went to a songwriting retreat and met these fabulous songwriters, Mimi Hearn and Chris Harbuck, and the three of us crafted this song together, and it's become one of my favorites to play. So,
okay, great. Let's hear it.
All right, sure. Hopefully this will be the right level, but I'll have to see. Sitting in my garden chair, there's a roly poly over there, touching many rows into a ball. There's no plan B for the roly poly. Got a feeling we're headed for a fall. Rising tides will sink our shores. Bumblebees won't buzz no more. Butterflies won't have a place to rest. Sink or swim, but we still care. Will the roly-poly still be there if we say we've done our very best? The garden grows all our food. The roly-poly lives there too. Like me and you, he wants grandkids too. Do I choose to sit and wait? Where the choices that we make, is there something more that we can do? Can I make a difference to what happens next? Yeah, there's some things I could do. Rising tides will sink our shores. Bumblebees won't buzz no more. Butterflies won't have a place to rest. Sink or swim, but we still care. Will the roly-poly still be there if we say we've done our very best? Can we handle what will happen next?
All right, Pete Kronowitt. The song is Roly Poly. It's from the album Do Something Now. So thank you so much for your time. We certainly appreciate it today, Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Sitting in the garden chair, there's a roly-poly over there, touching many rows into a ball. There's no